Right, we have Iron Man Annual 8 by Bob Patrick Harras and Paul Neary. It has a very unfair Simon Waltonson cover that gets your hopes up. This guest stars Extra Factor, the original Excellent Man. I thought I would look at this because it came up in my review of an issue of Hulk. And I hadn't read this before, but I did have it. Due to the guest appearance and the cover artist, it's easy to confuse with the first Extra Factor annual, which came out the same year, and to further muddy the waters, features an Iron Man villain. We have an evil Jiminy Cricket. This is the first page, and artistically, it is downhill after this. Paul Neary, his art in this annual sucks arse. And to be honest, the whole thing sucks the same arse. We have darling little Enoch. He is a stupidly powerful muty child who can bring his imagination to life. And the evil Jiminy Cricket is the devil on his shoulder, telling him to do all this bad stuff. Literally, it is on his shoulder telling him what to do half the time. His dad has had it up to here with all this. And then, that night, darling little Enoch is abducted in his sleep by Project Cadmus. This kid, darling little Enoch, he had another appearance before in Fantastic Force 203. As I said, he is stupidly powerful. He is too powerful to exist and to be ignored by every comic. That one, he imagined up an evil Fantastic Force. I have that issue too. You're all going to make me suffer through that next, aren't you? You're going to want me to review that. It's a shit issue. It's a shit character. Those are my biases. Out there, I am being upfront with those biases. It ends with Mr. Fantastical telling the dad to take Enoch to Dr. X so that the little darling can learn to control his muty gifts better. Then there was no follow-up to that ever. Darling little Enoch, however, became very well known in some circles because he was in the TSR role-playing books. Darling little Enoch seemed to be a favourite of someone at TSR. He was a mutie with annoyingly powerful abilities. It kind of makes sense that from an RPG perspective, that is the type of character that can be incorporated. And so, what I won't complain about is this annual doing a follow-up to Darling Little Enoch, a belated 8 years after Fantastic Force 203. That's good on the surface. That's good. And there's maybe 8 or 9 pages starting here where the story is okay. There's some bits in here that I like. I'll point them out. But overall, I hated this. It is written by Bob Patrick Harras, who had scripted the previous Iron Man annual, which is of important note to me as it was one of my first back issues. Iron Man is delivering some generator thing that he invented to Project Cadmus, and he meets with Guardman, his ally and friend, who is now in charge of security at Project Cadmus. He has taken over Kazar's job. Guardman is feeling burnt out because the project has taken in darling little Enoch and are keeping him under heavy sedation and are running tests on him. And he and Iron Man, they don't think that this is right. I think I need to do some lore dumping here, because Guardman does have a semi-central role in the part of this annual that I found less annoying. Guardman was an Iron Man opponent originally from Bill Bungalow's run on Iron Man, another notable run from my comic reading background. He was trying to get even for his brother's death, which he blamed Iron Man for. His brother was the first Guardman. He died after doing a face heel turn. This Guardman realised Iron Man wasn't to blame and became his friend. He was even technically Iron Man himself for the space of 2 issues. Project Cadmus was introduced much later by Marky Mark G, Daniel LaRusso, Jason Byrne and Jorge Perez in Marvel 2 for 1. Kazar was originally the guy in charge of security, but he quit after he was possessed by the Serpent Art. That's right, we've even got some important SeaWorld Attacks mythology tied up in this. At some point, Guardman took over Kazar's job. As far as I know, there are 3 appearances that acknowledge this setup. There is Royce Sternham's Avengers, which had a story with the Lava Men and Project Cadmus. I think that was the one where we established he was working there for the first time. Which makes sense, since Marky Mark G was editor of that series, and he was aware that Kazar needed replacing. And then the other one was there is an issue of The Thing, Marky Mark G and Mike Carlsberg. Thing went there to catch up with Kazar, only to find out he wasn't working there anymore. After this, Guardman becomes part of the Avengers support staff, their head of security. I suppose Iron Man put in a good word for him. Meanwhile, darling little Enoch's dad has come to Extra Factor HQ with a gun to demand they hand over his son. But he's obviously got the wrong place. But Extra Factor agree to help him anyway. He tells them about his muty son, and we get our backstory from Fantastic Four here. This was a relatively early appearance of the Extra Factor team. It was still in its infancy. They were using the naff Muty Hunter facade. They were pretending to be a public security force that unmuties and deal with them, where they were secretly tracking them down and helping them instead of killing them or locking them away or whatever people thought they were doing. The stuff with Iron Man's and God-Man's comfort being tested by the blatantly ethically dodgy treatment of darling little Enoch is maybe the strongest stuff in here. And then the Excellent Men, Extra Factor, they show up to free darling little Enoch from Project Cadmus, which further pushes the two armoured adventurers to directly confront their feelings on the matter. And we have a misunderstanding fight. Iron Man versus the Excellent Men. I really like, however, that Iron Man immediately recognises these as the original Excellent Men. And my favourite part of the issue is this bit where Smurf takes Iron Man aside, feigning fighting, to explain things from their perspective. And this works because the Smurf was an Avenger. And Iron Man didn't spot the Smurf because the Smurf had been de-smurfed. That was one of the many horribly reductive ideas that early Extra Factor did in the name of nostalgia for a team that sold so bad that their comic became reprints for 5 years. But what I like is that once Iron Man and the Smurf parlay, Iron Man is completely on their side. He trusts Smurf as a fellow Avenger. Best part of the issue right there. That the two characters talked it out and that they trust and respect each other enough to recognise and reassess what they are involved with. Darling little Enoch, unaware that they are working towards freeing him, he enacts his own bid for escape, and he imagines up a giant crab monster. God, it's giving me Benson flashbacks. Michael Bryan Benson's Avengers was my personal Vietnam. I had a dream about Movie Bob last night. I dreamt that Movie Bob had died. And it upset me a lot because Movie Bob shouldn't be in anyone's subconscious like that. This issue becomes dross, more or less, by this point. Paul Neary, he does not bring darling little Enoch's limitless powers to life in any exciting manner. And darling little Enoch is too powerful for any of the heroes to ever actually do much of anything about him. I think one of the biggest flaws is that following this destruction of Project Cadmus, God-Man is done with. His part in the story is over. And the drawback there is that they have actually set him up and is in a conflict. And then when all is said and done, it doesn't matter much. He has no closure or resolution here. We are done with that environment, so we are done with him. Of course, this is what brought me here. In Hulk 326, Special Agent Quarter Pounder mentioned that Project Cadmus had been destroyed, and that was why SHIELD were being tasked with holding the energy villain Zach Morris. That is that loop closed. However, I still want to point out it could as easily be intended to reference Beyond a Man destroying Project Cadmus a year earlier, and the way things happened, it turned out Project Cadmus was also destroyed again in this Iron Man annual, so that automatically appeared to be what Hulk was referencing. I explained why I believe that in that video. I said this issue gets worse the minute they start fighting Enoch, but actually I like this scene here. We are closing another loop. Mr. Fantastical, we check in with him. We do a clever, albeit obvious, parallel between Darling Little Enoch and Franklin Fantastical. It's not a bad scene, I don't mind it. I think one of the weird things about this annual is that Iron Man has very little connection to what is happening or what happened before. The Excellent Men make sense. Their inclusion in Darling Little Enoch's drama makes sense. But in Iron Man's case, it doesn't. And this was when Fantastic Force were staying at Avengers House. I think this story would have worked a tiny bit better if it had been Fantastic Force instead of Iron Man. But that wouldn't change my dislike of it all that much. I wanted to put my biases about Darling Little Enoch up front, but the truth is, there is one more bias I need to get out. I hate the Excellent Men now. I cannot stand the pricks. They have been hijacked by people who have victim complexes and persecution complexes, and all the Excellent Men can be ever is bullshit. It's a performative validation comic for people who get boners over power scaling. Storm beats bigotry because she actually created the universe, don't you know? And I hated Phoenix before all that. I always hated Phoenix. And she is insufferable in here. She is laying out the "we are the real victims" rhetoric, while, as always, being physically able to pass herself off as normal and having access to powers with zero downside whatsoever. She is a cunt. I hate her. I really, really hate Phoenix. She is the worst character in comics. And this is what the freaks who read Excellent Men comics love. That there's a whining, all-powerful cunt that can do anything she wants and still be the poor, oppressed minority. That is wish fulfillment for them. That is what they want life to be. You know what's great about Emma Frosty's? Nobody has ever fucking had to explain how powerful she is. People like her because of her character and how she has been written, not because of what she can do. And that feeds into Darling Little Enoch. I hate this character too. This kid is only here because he is so powerful. There's no personality motivating him. Well, there is an evil Jiminy Cricket That is what is motivating them. That is how weak a prospect this kid is as a character. He needs a fucking plot device on his shoulder to motivate him to do anything. And it goes further in that there's nothing that the heroes can honestly do against a kid this powerful. This is an Iron Man annual. What is Iron Man realistically able to do against a kid who can warp reality and imagine anything he wants? Good writers can do that. Good writers can take these unfathomably powerful villains and write a logical and satisfying story where it is never a critical factor. But Patrick Harras isn't one of those writers, sadly. Another thing to point out is that this isn't even a year after Secret Wars II. It feels repetitive by nature. And not just because both these insanely powerful threats destroyed Project Cadmus. Even if you eliminate Secret Wars II from the conversation, it's not an original story. The only unique element is that it is a kid, and that isn't unique either. In fact, the issue even pointed out how ununique it is on an earlier page. So, there's not much of anything that heroes can do, which is why in the end, they don't really do anything. Darlin Enoch is so powerful, he has wiped out all of the excellent men at once here. Iron Man is the last hero standing. But even he isn't capable of doing anything about all-powerful Enoch. And so, the only way that the story can deal with Enoch, the only way we can defeat a character who seems undefeatable, it's himself. There's also some desperate shite here about how he accidentally killed his mum. But Enoch, he rebels against Grunt, the little frog. And so Enoch is gone. The heroes in the end didn't really matter much. Presumably, Enoch would have still came to this conflict with the Grunt aspect, even if they weren't there. Fuck Enoch. He's a dickhead kid. A stupid character that was so poorly written that the only way to resolve it was by having him just stop himself. And then we have his funeral, where Phoenix makes it again all about how badly she and her people are persecuted. And Iron Man, who has been on their side for the whole thing, is just another human capable of the same bigotry. There's a horrible tease that we might see darling little Enoch again when Grunt, the frog, is there at his grave. But mercifully, he never did come back. He eventually got an Andy Boot profile, but that's it. I don't want people to think I ate this because of Phoenix, or because the excellent men are present. I liked the bit with Smurf. I liked that. I didn't like the story. It had a very bad one-off character with an even worse showman frog sidekick. That was a new idea. That was exclusive to this annual. It had almost nothing to do with Iron Man. And what good it did muster went to total waste. We quickly had Iron Man side with the excellent men. So why is Phoenix chewing them out and treating him like just another bigot. We had Godman. He didn't even show up on the final page at the funeral. Mr. Fantastical and Invisible Wife are there if you look close enough, but not Godman. Why have him in the story at all if you're done with him after setting him up? This is, apparently, why he quit working at Project Cadmus. You only know that from Andy book entries. Why isn't that in this issue? Why isn't that at the end, at the funeral? And then with Enoch, why not have Iron Man try to find some technological or mechanical way to deal with the problem? Or why not truly explore if Iron Man is comfortable with having to kill a kid? Like, towards the end, it seems a foregone conclusion that darling little Enoch is too powerful to let live. There's story to do there instead of, and then the kid offs himself. 7 thumbs up.